Most people misunderstand empaths. They see someone who is patient, someone who listens, someone who forgives, someone who gives second chances when nobody else would. And because of that, they make a dangerous mistake. They assume that kindness is weakness. One of the biggest mistakes people make when dealing with an empath is assuming they only hear words. In reality, empaths experience conversations on a much deeper level. While most people focus on what is being said, an empath pays attention to how it is being said. They notice the hesitation before an answer. They notice the change in someone's voice when a difficult topic appears. They sense tension that nobody else seems to recognize. This ability isn't magic and it isn't mind reading. It's the result of being highly sensitive to emotional information that most people overlook. An empath absorbs emotional energy from the people around them. When someone enters a room feeling anxious, angry, excited, or hurt, the empath often feels those emotions even before a single word is spoken. This is why many empaths become exhausted in negative environments. They are constantly processing emotions that do not even belong to them. They pick up on hidden frustrations, silent disappointments, and unspoken fears. What appears invisible to others becomes obvious to them. Because of this heightened awareness, it is extremely difficult to deceive an empath for long. Someone may claim they are being honest, but if their actions and emotions tell a different story, the empath notices the inconsistency. They may not confront it immediately. In fact, many empaths remain silent because they hope their instincts are wrong. They prefer giving people the benefit of the doubt rather than assuming the worst. However, every interaction leaves an impression. Empaths remember how people make them feel, even when they forget the exact words that were spoken. They can sense genuine care, and they can also sense manipulation disguised as kindness. This deep emotional awareness is what makes empaths unique. They are not simply listening to conversations. They are listening to intentions, emotions, and motives that exist beneath the surface, where the truth often reveals itself long before anyone is willing to admit it. One of the most common misunderstandings about empaths is that people mistake their kindness for weakness. An empath is often calm, patient, understanding, and willing to give others the benefit of the doubt. Because they avoid unnecessary conflict and frequently choose compassion over confrontation, many people assume they can be easily controlled or taken advantage of. What they fail to recognize is that true kindness requires a level of strength that most people never develop. An empath has the ability to remain compassionate even after experiencing disappointment. They can listen to someone else's pain while carrying struggles of their own. They often choose understanding when others would choose judgment. This is not the behavior of a weak person. It is the behavior of someone with tremendous emotional strength and self-control. Many empaths spend years learning how to manage the emotions they absorb from the people around them. They understand suffering because they feel deeply. They understand loneliness because they notice it in others. They understand fear, insecurity, and sadness because they have spent a lifetime observing emotions that most people ignore. This awareness creates a unique kind of resilience. While others may react impulsively, empaths often remain thoughtful and measured in their responses. The problem begins when people confuse patience with permission. They assume the empath's willingness to forgive means there are no boundaries. They believe the empath will continue tolerating disrespect because they have tolerated it before. Over time, this creates a dangerous illusion. The person causing harm starts believing they hold all the power in the relationship. What they don't realize is that the empath's greatest strength is not their ability to stay. It is their ability to leave when necessary. Once an empath recognizes that their kindness is being exploited, they can become surprisingly decisive. The same person who seemed endlessly forgiving can suddenly become firm, clear, and impossible to manipulate. Their compassion remains intact, but it is no longer available to those who abuse it. What appeared to be weakness was actually controlled strength, and when that strength finally reveals itself, many people are shocked by what they failed to see all along. One of the most remarkable traits of an empath is their ability to tolerate mistreatment longer than most people. This does not happen because they enjoy being hurt or because they fail to recognize unhealthy behavior. In many cases, an empath sees the problem long before anyone else does. The difference is that they are constantly trying to understand the reasons behind a person's actions. While others focus on the behavior itself, the empath looks deeper, searching for the pain, fear, insecurity, or unresolved struggles that may be causing it. This desire to understand others often leads empaths to give far more chances than most people would consider reasonable. They see potential where others see failure. They see wounds where others see flaws. When someone behaves poorly, the empath frequently asks questions that others never consider. What happened to this person? What are they going through? Why are they acting this way? Instead of immediately walking away, they attempt to offer patience, support, and understanding. Unfortunately, not everyone appreciates this level of compassion. Some people begin to take it for granted. They assume the empath will always be there no matter what happens. Each apology is accepted, each promise is believed, each mistake is forgiven. Over time, the person causing the harm may start believing there are no consequences for their actions. They mistake the empath's understanding for unlimited tolerance. What they fail to see is that every act of disrespect leaves an emotional impact. The empath may remain calm on the surface, but internally they are collecting experiences and learning important lessons about the relationship. They notice patterns. They remember broken promises. They recognize when the same problems continue without meaningful change. Their patience does not erase the damage, it simply delays their response to it. Because empaths focus so heavily on helping others, they often neglect their own emotional needs for far too long. They keep investing energy, hoping things will improve. They keep believing in possibilities that may never become reality. But eventually a moment arrives when understanding is no longer enough. The empath realizes that compassion cannot replace accountability, and caring about someone does not require accepting behavior that continuously causes pain. The moment an empath stops explaining, forgiving, and chasing is the moment everything begins to change. Most people expect a dramatic confrontation when an empath reaches their limit. They imagine anger, arguments, emotional outbursts, or some obvious sign that the relationship is in trouble. But that is rarely how it happens. In many cases, the most significant shift occurs quietly, almost invisibly, long before anyone realizes what is happening. For a long time, the empath has likely been the one holding things together. They are the person initiating difficult conversations, trying to solve misunderstandings, offering reassurance, and giving people opportunities to correct their mistakes. They explain their feelings repeatedly, hoping to create understanding. They forgive because they value connection. They chase because they believe relationships are worth fighting for. Their effort becomes so consistent that others begin to see it as normal. Then something changes. The empath starts noticing that the effort is no longer being returned. They realize they are carrying responsibilities that should be shared. They become aware that they are constantly making excuses for behavior that continues to hurt them. Instead of seeing growth, they see repetition. Instead of seeing accountability, they see more promises that lead nowhere. At first, the changes are subtle. The empath stops sending the extra message. They stop initiating every conversation. They stop explaining the same feelings over and over again. They stop trying to convince someone to care. These actions may seem small, but they represent a major emotional shift. The empath is no longer investing energy where it is not appreciated. Many people fail to recognize these warning signs because they have become accustomed to the empath's constant presence. They assume nothing has changed. They believe the empath will eventually return to their usual role of fixing problems and maintaining the connection. What they don't understand is that the empath is no longer fighting to be understood. When an empath reaches this stage, they are often closer to leaving than anyone realizes. The emotional bond that once motivated endless patience begins to weaken. The person who once worked tirelessly to preserve the relationship starts protecting their own peace instead, and that decision marks the beginning of a transformation that is extremely difficult to reverse. When an empath disconnects emotionally, the change is far deeper than most people realize. Many assume that because empaths care deeply, they will always return no matter how much pain they experience. This belief often leads people to take their loyalty for granted. What they fail to understand is that emotional disconnection is usually the final stage of a long internal process, not a sudden decision made in a moment of frustration. Before an empath disconnects, they have often spent months or even years trying to repair what is broken. They have communicated their concerns, offered understanding, and given countless opportunities for change. By the time they begin to pull away emotionally, they are not acting impulsively. They are responding to a pattern that has repeated itself too many times. The most surprising part is that an empath can still be polite, respectful, and calm after they disconnect. On the surface, everything may appear normal, yet internally, something has changed. The emotional investment that once fueled their patience is gone. The hope that motivated them to keep trying has faded. Once this emotional bond is severed, it is extremely difficult to rebuild. The empath may remember the good times and appreciate the lessons learned, but they no longer feel the same attachment. They have accepted a truth they resisted for a long time. And that acceptance often creates a level of clarity that permanently changes how they see the relationship and the people involved. The greatest regret often comes long after the empath is gone. While the relationship is still active, many people fail to recognize the value of what they have. They become accustomed to the empath's support, understanding, and loyalty. Because these qualities are consistently available, they start to feel ordinary. What was once appreciated slowly becomes expected. An empath often provides emotional safety that few people can offer. They listen without judgment, encourage others during difficult times, and remain present even when circumstances become challenging. Their willingness to care deeply creates a sense of comfort that many people don't fully appreciate until it disappears. When the empath finally leaves, the absence becomes impossible to ignore. The messages become less frequent. The support is no longer there. The person who always seemed willing to understand is suddenly focused on their own path. This is often the moment when realization begins. People start looking back at conversations they overlooked. They remember acts of kindness they barely acknowledged. They recognize the patience they once took for granted. What seemed ordinary was actually rare. The regret becomes especially powerful because it is tied to missed opportunities. The empath was giving genuine care, loyalty, and understanding, yet those gifts were not valued when they were available. By the time that truth becomes clear, the empath has often moved forward, carrying their compassion elsewhere, and leaving behind a lesson that cannot be easily forgotten.